The 62-year-old man, suspected of 10 people on a subway train in Brooklyn on Tuesday, has been arrested by patrol officers in New York's East Village, police have confirmed. Frank James, who police initially described as a person of interest, was declared a suspect on Wednesday after investigators determined he purchased the gun recovered at the scene, law enforcement officials said. Designated driver knocked out with bat trying to defuse car park. The NYPD is looking for Frank James, the man who rented a U-Haul truck found near the scene of the subway in Brooklyn. James posted videos discussing violence, mass before the two law enforcement officials told CNN the gun evidence was the turning point in elevating him from a person of interest to a suspect. Mr. James is suspected of setting off smoke grenades and firing a handgun 33 times on a crowded subway train making its way toward the 36th Street station in Brooklyn's Sunset Park neighborhood. The attack left 29 people injured, including 10 who were shot, though none of the injuries appear to be life-threatening, officials said. 5 of the victims were young people commuting to school, New York Governor Kathy Hochul said. The motive of the is not yet known. The attack is not being investigated as an act of terrorism, but authorities have not ruled out anything, NYPD Commissioner Keechant Sewell said. The city issued an emergency alert to residents on Wednesday, saying Mr. James was wanted and asking the public for tips. The U.S. Marshals Service joined the manhunt as well, a spokesperson told CNN. 33 shots, but less than 30 hours later, we're able to say we got him, Mayor Eric Adams said after the arrest. The subway represents a long-feared nightmare scenario for New York City, which relies heavily on its mass transit system. Subway ridership cratered during the COVID pandemic as many workers stayed home, and ridership has not returned to its pre-pandemic levels, in part due to awareness over an increase in violence on the transit system. Australia urges Solomon Islands to ditch controversial China security agreement. New York City Police Department personnel gather at the entrance to a subway stop in Brooklyn. How investigators honed in on James. Investigators combing through the scene found a Glock 9mm handgun, 3 extended magazines, 2 detonated smoke grenades, 2 non-detonated smoke grenades, a hatchet and keys to a U-Haul van, NYPD Chief of Detectives James Essex said. A credit card that was used to rent the U-Haul was also found, 2 law enforcement sources told CNN. 2 officials told CNN they believe the gun jammed during the. Police said the U-Haul van was rented by Mr. James, connecting him to the incident. The van was recovered near the station and has been cleared by the NYPD squad, police said. Investigators did not find any other weapons or explosives in the van, 2 law enforcement officials said. The officials said it appeared Mr. James may have slept in the vehicle. They said a license plate reader detected the van driving over the Verrazzano Bridge from Staten Island into Brooklyn about 4 a.m. on Tuesday. Law enforcement gathering at the scene of the. Authorities also tracked the purchase of a gas mask to Mr. James through an eBay account, 2 officials said. Mr. James has addresses in Wisconsin and in Philadelphia, where the U-Haul was rented, Chief Essex said. His family did not immediately respond to CNN's request for comment. Within the 36th Street station, surveillance video may not be available. A preliminary review indicates there was some sort of malfunction with the camera system at the station, Adams told WCBS Radio. Still, the Metropolitan Transportation Authority system has almost 10,000 cameras, including almost 600 cameras on the Brooklyn section, where the attack took place, MTA Chair and CEO John Oliver said Wednesday. The result is that the NYPD has been able to comb through video from other stations, and they have actually, as a result, identified 3 perspectives on the fellow who is wanted for this crime coming into the station, he said. How the unfolded. In this photo from social media video, passengers run from a subway car in a station in the Brooklyn borough of New York City. People aboard the train car on Tuesday morning said smoke filled the car and gunshots rang out, causing people to push their way to the other side of the train in panic and confusion. Ari Ben Carter, 27, who was shot in the back of the knee, said he thinks he was sitting next to the shooter. Speaking from a hospital bed Tuesday, Mr. Ben Carter said he'd gotten into the last car of the N train and sat next to a man with a duffel bag who appeared to be wearing an MTA vest. The man let off a smoke, the housekeeping manager at the New Yorker hotel said. And all you see smoke, black smoke going off, and then people bum rushing to the back, he said. This started about 20 seconds after the train took off from the 59th Street station and felt like it lasted for nearly 2 minutes, Mr. Ben Carter said. Ari Ben Carter was sitting next to the suspected New York subway gunman. Claire Tunkel, 46, who was in the subway car where the took place, described the scene as chaotic. She said she couldn't see anything because of the smoke, but she heard people crying out for help and others saying they were bleeding. You couldn't see anything, but you could feel it, she said. People were rushing to the front of the car, and some fell to the ground, she said. You could feel the bodies. She took off her jacket and tied it around the leg of a man who suffered a gunshot wound, she told CNN. Ms. Tunkel, who later went to the hospital for smoke inhalation, said several victims were lying on the floor of the subway platform after the train arrived at the station. Suspect talked about Mass S in rambling videos. Mr. James has been linked to rambling videos posted on a YouTube channel. A screenshot from one of the videos is used on an NYPD Crime Stoppers flyer seeking information about and in one video, he posts a City of New York ID card from a past educational training program. In what appears to be his latest video, posted on Monday, Mr. James talks about someone who engaged in violence and ended up in jail. New York City Police Department personnel gather at the entrance to a subway stop in Brooklyn. He said he could identify, but talked about the consequences. I've been through a lot of, where I can say I wanted to people, he said. I wanted to watch people die right in front of my effing face immediately. But I thought about the fact that, hey man, I don't want to go to no effing prison. California woman Sherry Papini admits she faked her 2016 kidnapping. Emergency personnel gather at the entrance to a subway stop in the Brooklyn borough of New York. Videos include racist and misogynistic language. Many of the videos Mr. James uploaded included references to violence, including at a set group of people he believed had maligned him, in addition to broad societal and racial groups that he appeared to hate. In one video posted online in February, Mr. James criticized a plan by New York City Mayor Eric Adams' administration to address safety and homelessness in the subway, in part through an expanded presence of mental health professionals. In that racist and rambling recording, Mr. James said the new effort was doomed to fail and described his own negative experience with city health workers during a crisis of mental health back in the 90s, 80s, and 70s. In a video posted last week, Mr. James, who is black, rants about abuse in churches and racism in the workplace, using misogynistic and racist language. Emergency personnel gather at the entrance to a subway stop in the Brooklyn borough. We need to see more Mass S, he says, after talking about community violence. Yeah. We need to see more. There has to be more Mass S to make a NO understand. It's not about the shooter. It's about the environment in which he is. He has to exist. That speech was a common theme throughout Mr. James' videos, in which he repeatedly espoused hatred toward African Americans. In another video posted last month to the same channel, Mr. James said he had post-traumatic stress. In that video, he said he left his home in Milwaukee on March 20th. During the trip eastward, he said he was heading to the danger zone. You know, it's triggering a lot of negative thoughts, of course, he said in the video. I do have a severe case of post-traumatic stress. New York City Police Commissioner Keechant Sewell speaks at a news conference in Brooklyn. Preliminary information indicated Mr. James mentioned homelessness, New York City, and its mayor in online posts, NYPD Commissioner Keechant Sewell said Tuesday.